There we go. That's better. Let us start with the 2-octave C scale that we worked on last week. And I want to hear you play it. Okay?
Thank you.
Good. The top octave was much better than last week. Are you starting to feel the closeness of your first and second finger on the upper strings?
Definitely,
Good.
yeah.
How have you been doing? How have you been feeling tension-wise with that hand? Has it gotten any better?
Yeah, I feel like I've been working on this a lot more instead of going like this a lot. Trying to play it out here.
That's good, but you don't want to go too far out. Like when you were just showing me that you kind of went like that.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to flare your set. You kind of want it to run it straight. And if it does kind of loosen in here, it's okay as long as you're maintaining space. That's really your prerogative in terms of that aspect. But you can relax a little bit. I tend to have to in order to reach bigger spaces, so it is okay. You just don't want to squish whatever's there. Good. When you're bowing on your scales, practice so you're facing like this to the mirror, so you just know where your bow is straight at each point. You tend to be pretty good, but once in a while, I'm probably sitting in the way of the video. Once in a while, you go out this way. You need to pull it back. So when you're in the mirror, look for the different shapes that I know we talked about in violin. I think we talked about actually.
Yeah, and the box.
And it's that, and then like the open box, and the longer triangle at each spot. Okay? Alright, so we started working on the first few lines of the Londonderry Air. How have you been doing with that? I know it involves a lot of shifting.
Yeah, it's mostly the remembering where and when to shift. Like when I started reading the second line without the fingerings, I needed to remember where to shift.
Okay. Do you want to try to play it on your own?
Alright.
Yeah? Okay. Let's stop there, because then the next line is a repetition of that idea. First of all, I know that you're trying to follow the dynamic markings that are written there, which are pianissimo, which is good. But until you get the good intonation and comfort with the notes, try to practice a little louder so you can hear yourself a little more. And what else was I going to say? Oh, watch out for these half steps. You have them written in, so just pay attention to them. If you continuously miss them, use a bright color and write it in there. And let's try just up to the same spot and play it a little bit louder and just focus on looking ahead so you know where you go next. Okay? Good. That was much better. Still just keep looking out for that half step.
Yeah.
It's the same as when we were doing the C scale, how your half step was just a little bit too big. They're nice and close. And you adjusted, which is good because it means you're hearing it. Okay?
Yeah.
Another observation with your shifting is sometimes you hear the shift really audibly, which for certain things is good and it's what you want. But for this, you kind of want it to be a little cleaner. So when you shift, let's see. You can release the pressure of your finger that's down a little bit more so you don't hear the Alright? And it'll also help with, I know we started to talk about last lesson, bringing your whole hand up when you shift, including your thumb, not just your finger. Because your hand is big enough that you can sometimes get away with shifting without your whole hand. But really, to maintain that good intonation and a good hand frame, you need your whole hand to come up with you. Okay? So let's try, and I'm going to play it with you so you can listen for good intonation, okay? Okay, we're gonna stop right there. You added a shift in, which somewhat made sense because of what came before it. You were following that pattern. However, what do you think about this line makes it different than that line? That it would actually make it harder to shift?
There's no need to because you're not going up higher.
Right, you're coming back down. So it would just cause you to move more. Usually you use shifting to avoid A, string crossing, and just like when it's smoother to just go up and you're going to be in that position for a long period of time. In this case, you're coming right back down and you're going to need to be in first position to play the notes that follow. So it's actually creating more difficult movement and more greater amounts of movement that are unnecessary by moving up. So for that, I would stay in first position. That was much better. You have a tendency to fall a little bit flat with your third position shifts. And a good way to check that is it's an octave from what's underneath. And you should also be listening for ringtones, which is certain notes on the instrument that will ring out loud. Like you'll be able to hear it, and that would be one of them, the third position right there. Okay? And still watch that second finger. Are you comfortable moving on, or would you like to keep practicing? That,
I feel like I just want to go from the beginning to this because I still just for finger muscle memory.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna watch. Oh. Why don't we? I think you're having difficulty hearing what's coming next. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you hear it in your head? Do you ever sing what you're playing before you play it? Okay, why don't you sing through the line and then see if it helps you remember the pitch that you're aiming for a little better, okay? So just sing up until there. Right, and then what comes next? Right, and now what happens when you reach here? You have a tendency to expect it to go back to the open string.
Yeah.
Like where you started, but in fact you're starting in an A. Okay? And then you're shifting all the way to third position. Okay? So listen for that in your head before you play. If you want to stop for right now and hear it and then play, if that will help you, you could try that. Okay? So why don't you start again from the beginning? Right there. Just keep your G is consistently flat.
Yeah.
You should try. Hold on, let me put my shoulder rest back on. For now, I want you to stop and test it.
Yeah.
I said G. I keep saying G. I mean C.
Yeah,
Viola.
that's what I thought you meant.
I'm sorry. And then check it. Okay? Because it's really important that you get that note because you're playing in that position for a while. And the intonation of your other fingers are going to rely on whether your first finger is in the right place. Okay?
Yep.
And
Let's try it from here.
yeah. And when you're shifting up, the reason you might be falling flat is try to reduce the amount of tension in your thumb so your fingers can, you want your fingers to glide like back and forth on the string, and tension in your hand will stop it from gliding, which makes it harder to get to where you want to go. So just go like this a few times. Okay. Alright. Now I want you to isolate that shift and just go. Alright, first, we're going to do this in steps. You ready? First, you're going to go and then slide. So you can feel the distance between the two notes. Alright, do that 2 more times. Now this time, do 2 different strokes and don't slide in between. You can slide, but don't, I don't want to hear it.
Play it.
Right, don't play it. Okay, do that a few more times. Okay, now can you try to do it in one bow? Much better. When you have difficulty with certain shifts, isolate them before moving on. And then it is always important to go from what comes before it and connect into it. Otherwise, you could still end up having a problem when you get to that spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like you can spot treat it, but then you always have to go back and put it back into the context of the piece. All right, so let's try working that one phrase one more time.
From the beginning to that area?
Yeah, you can even go to here. All right. No. Where'd you go to?